Hi, this is Drew Tignanelli. This is our March update and pinch hitting for Mikey. We've got Graham Ewing. Graham, how you doing?
Here I am. I didn't even have time to put my makeup on today, so we're gonna see what happens.
Neither of us put our toupes on either.
No,
So,
no, no.
no.
We like this haircut. It's easy to get ready in the morning.
And it dries quickly
It does. I mean,
after you
if
shower.
you don't have the haircut, maybe you should try it.
I told my wife when it rains outside, she says, "You want to get under the umbrella?" I said, "I got waterproof hair. What do I care?" You know? Anyway, we're on our March update. What's some of the things that are going on before we get to our market update?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's some housekeeping things we like to let clients know. So we use a bank aggregator called Flourish. And basically, they are a company that they go out there to all the banks, Bank of America and Wells Fargo, wherever, all the banks. I probably shouldn't name names, but they say, hey, we've got all this money from clients. Now give us your best interest rate. And so they do. They're able to go to all these banks and get really high interest rates. And then you, as a client of Flourish, can get that higher interest rate than you really could most places just walking off the street. So it's a really great option if you haven't talked to your advisor about it yet. But you also actually have the ability to refer friends or family or just people you know who are out there who have a bank account that we all know is paying 0.01%. And right now, Flourish is paying 4%. This does not mean that they are a client of the financial consulate, but you can refer them and they can use this as well.
So keep in mind that it's $5 million of FDIC insurance for a single, 10 million for married. So even people who have large balances in banks, they don't have to worry about whether it's FDIC insured or not.
Right.
But you can only get to Flourish if you're invited by a firm like ours, or if we invite you, we can let you invite somebody else. And we have allowed that because we don't get anything from Flourish. We're not servicing it. We're not taking anything on it. But if our clients like have children or friends that they say, "Hey, this is a great deal. You ought to get in on this," they can.
Right. Yeah, we just hate to see that 0.01%.
Oh,
People.
there's nothing more frustrating in the world to me, Graham, than seeing a client earn 0% basically from these brick and mortar banks when in today's world, a few years ago, that was about what everyone could get. Today, you should be able to get 3.5 to 4.5 without a lot of difficulty, and Flourish is getting us 4. And they're always going to be on the high end because that's how they make their money, right?
Right.
A bank like Ally Bank or Discover, their board of directors is determining whether they want to offer higher rates and attract more people or whether they want to bring rates down and detract people, Flourish only wants to attract people, so they want the highest rate.
And
So
so as you can tell, we could do a whole webinar on this, but alas, we'll move on to the next topic,
moving on.
housekeeping, which is actually announcing what the next webinar is, which is so it'll be the end of March. It's going to be the biggest retirement planning mistakes. So if you're looking to avoid those mistakes, you definitely want to watch this webinar. It'll be at the end of February. I'm sorry, the end of March, and you'll get an email about that as well. And then just one other thing there is we put out an article every month, and the next article is going to be tax planning tips and understanding your return. We're right in the middle of tax season, so that is going to be a really helpful article for people to read.
Yeah, and just at the end of February, we posted the February webinar, which is how to review your tax return. So we're getting our tax returns back to our clients now to review. A lot of them just ignore them. They just say, well, they did it right. Boom, sign off. You should watch this video, this webinar, and review your return. Just doing the cursory glances at the things we mention in this will help us tremendously because with the amount of pressure that we have doing tax returns, it's never going to be 100% perfect. It's just not. And we need their help to do some basic reviews like we talked about in this video, how to do a simple review of your return. So
Right. Right.
hopefully everybody looks at that also. And our Knowledge Center on the Financial Consulate website is always a great place to get lots of good information. So
It
I'm
is.
moving on to markets.
Yeah.
What do you think?
That sounds good. Let's hear it.
So the markets this year went up and now they're back down a little. You could call them flattish for the year. But they're certainly not down a lot. People are just curious. The markets are sitting there trying to figure out Trump's moving so fast
Right.
that a lot of people are just nervous as to what is going to be the outcome of this? Is it going to be positive or negative? You keep saying you're going to do this or that and this and that, and then it switches and it's this and it's that, and so that kind of uncertainty is always a short-term negative for the markets. There's nothing yet that they're talking about that they want to do that makes us overly concerned about markets, but in the short term, uncertainty causes these gyrations. That's a good word for it. Gyrations like you're seeing right now. So,
Well, and yeah, just to mention one of the things we've been seeing is that international has outperformed US this year, which you'd think with everything happening, how is that even possible? But the main thing to take away from this is that you always want to have that diversified portfolio that might still be mainly US, but some other asset classes in there as well.
well, look, investors always run toward the last great thing at the end, you know? And so the S&P 500 has done great for the last 6 or 7 years. And now everybody's convinced that that's the only place you make money. But, Warren Buffett has been a rock solid US investor for 50 some years or 60 some years until just 4 years ago.
Right.
4 years ago, he started to investing in other places in the world. Right. Unheard of for Warren Buffett.
Right.
Japan's his second biggest country holding right now. And he has a big investment in Hong Kong, of all places. So, even Buffett is saying, the U.S. is great. I'm going to continue to invest in the U.S. But it's the values, the opportunities internationally are quite reasonable right now. That's how markets work, Graham.
Right.
And anyway, so the Federal Reserve is starting to done quantitative easing for years and years and years. That's where they were buying bonds to drive interest rates lower. And then about a year or two ago, or 3 years ago, they started to do quantitative tightening, which is they started to sell those bonds off. And as they sold them, rates would go higher and higher and higher. And the question that a lot of people have on their mind now is that tightening seems to be coming to an end. And maybe the Fed is going to reverse gear now and start either being neutral or start buying bonds back and driving rates down, which would be extremely bullish for markets, but not just the U.S. market, but for all markets of the world. The U.S. tends to be a driving force in the world.
Right.
So bonds have been rallying a little lately. That's a good thing because they've been in a downer for 4 years now. So to see the bond market start to show some life is a good sign. So, we're glad to see that. And, the dollar is continuing to show signs of weakening, but certainly not weak in any way, shape, or form. But it is weakening. So all in all, Graham, we're not concerned about markets. Politics don't drive us to be worried about markets. And the big concerns are the Federal Reserve and the banks. And the Federal Reserve seems to be more on the side of either quantitative easing and loosening of interest rates. And the banks are still extremely strong. we don't see a lot to be worried about.
Yeah, and even within that, like you said earlier, there's uncertainty, and there's always going to be uncertainty. There's always been, and there's always going to be. And so all of the investing that anybody does on an individual level has to go back to what is my financial plan? And we talk about it with clients kind of in a bucketing approach. We talk about, well, what's your short-term bucket and your midterm bucket and your long-term bucket? Well, if you need the money in that short-term bucket in the next year or two or three, well, it has no business being invested 100% equities and experiencing those gyrations you're talking about. Whereas if it's that long-term bucket, you maybe a Roth IRA, something you're not going to need for 15, 20 years or more, that that fluctuation, while painful in the short term, is okay because we're not expecting to need that for such a long time. And you always have to go back to that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I always say that your goals should define your investments, not nothing else. Your goals. What are you trying to accomplish? And if you could accomplish it with a 3% interest rate, why should you be shooting for a 10 or 12% interest rate?
Exactly. Exactly. So
Anyway,
for things, we're
the
trying to figure out this deadline for BOI. Do you want to talk about BOI there, Drew?
I don't, but I've got to. BOI is beneficial ownership interests, and it came up actually, believe it or not, this was passed originally, or at least contemplated and proposed by the Trump administration back in 2018 or 19, where they wanted every single small entity, pass-through entity, LLCs and S corporations, to report to the federal government who they are, who owns them, et cetera, et cetera. Why do they want to do that? Is because there's a small percentage of those business entities that are owned by bad guys. They do it for money laundering and all kinds of other things, that they own these entities. And so they figured that if they could get everyone to report who the heck owns you, et cetera, they would be able to better do enforcement of these entities. And again, it's kind of like TSA, Graham. A few people hijacked a plane and did some really awful things, and we all paid for it 20 some years later, right? And this is what BOI is. There's a few bad guys that are using these pass-through entities, and now we all have to pay the price for it by reporting who we are, what do we own. Even though we're doing tax returns and all this kind of stuff, we've got to do this. And now the deadline was 1/1/26. It was then stopped by the courts in November. It was put back on the Biden administration in December. It was stopped by the courts in December, and it was put back on the courts in February. And now FinCEN, the government group that oversees this, wants your filing in before March 21st. But here's the funny thing, Graham. There's a bill in the House that passed unanimously. You know what the chances of a House bill passing unanimously is? 0 votes against it. And it was to delay the BOI reporting again until January 1, 2026. Okay? So if it passes, we've got to buy until 1/1/26 now, but we don't know if it's going to get a buy or not.
Right.
And we have until March 21st. If it doesn't get passed, we have until March 21st. And as you can tell up on Capitol Hill, they've got a lot of weird stuff going on. Who knows if the Senate now will take it up and say, hey, let's get this done. Let's get this off everyone's plate for now. And let's pass it off to 1/1/26. We don't know. But right now, the deadline's 3/21.
Right. So the bottom line for all of our clients out there listening is if you own a business, really of any kind, let's just keep it simple, of any kind, even though there's some that are exempt, just reach out to your advisor and see.
But we can't call it a business, Graham. We got to say, if you have an LLC.
Yes, an LLC, anything that shows up on your tax return basically as a business or yeah, LLC.
Or real estate. A lot of people just put a piece of real estate in there and call it, and title it in the name of an LLC. If
Right.
you've done that, you've got a BOI requirement. If you've got a business and it's a pass-through entity, an LLC or an S corp, you've got a BOI requirement. And you know what the penalty is? It's like a few $100s a day
Right.
not to file.
Right.
And we have until March 21. And if it doesn't get extended,
Right.
it's $100 some a day.
Right. Yeah. So this is
Anyway,
something we have on our radar, but if you, yeah, if you think this applies to you, just please reach out. Yeah.
Social Security fairness. What a great name for something but
Yeah.
anyway, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
So,
We won't get into that, but yeah, the Social Security Fairness Act applies to really anybody who either paid into a pension that was not, they were not at the time covered under Social Security, if it was them themselves, or if it was a spouse. So the names you'll hear out there are something called the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. This applied to some teachers in certain states like California. It applied to a lot of police officers. It applied to a lot of the CSRS employees of the
those
federal
are the ones that worked for the government well before 1984.
19, right, exactly. So if you either paid into a pension instead of paying into Social Security for any period of time, or your spouse did, whether that spouse is alive or not, that this could affect you. And you likely have heard of this already. And the big update here is that while the adjustments were expected to take quite a long time, they have announced that they're starting to make those payments actually this month and next month and in April. And the big thing here is that they're retroactive. This law, while it got passed on at the very beginning of 2025, it is applying back to January 1st of 2024. So
Right.
people will be getting these lump sum payments of several $1,000s in addition to an increased monthly benefit.
Yeah, we just did one with the other day. Client went in and applied. They got denied. They did it online. They got denied. All of a sudden, Social Security finally called them back and said, "Nope, you're right. We've got to do this." And they said, "We're going to send you a lump sum of $14,000." Now, even though her benefit was not a large one, it was it should be larger than 14,000. We're not, that's one of the problems we have. We're not sure. Social Security is moving fast. We're not sure they're calculating it correctly, though. So you got to be on the lookout. And also, Graham, we have to point out that the clients who have a pension and they're married, they could be under the government offset. And the only way they're going to get this is if they apply.
Right.
They have to apply. Some of the people who were under the windfall elimination provision, and it's their own Social Security that's been diminished,
Right.
will get an automatic. But those who are married and they're getting Social Security off of their spouse, they have to apply.
Right. Right.
So anyway, we got another topic. If that's you, you need to contact us so we can determine what needs to be done for you.
Yeah.
Last topic, finding purpose in retirement. We're just going to kind of go through these. Focus on discovering your passion.
Right.
Yeah, you got the time. If you're retired and you don't need to work anymore, determine what it is in life that's going to give you fulfillment, purpose, fulfillment, that when you leave this earth, and we're all going to leave this earth, whether we like to think about it or not, we're going to leave it. And when that day comes, do we want to look back and regret what it is we did? Or do we want to look back and feel fulfilled that I feel like I did what I needed to do?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Those interests are something that comes to mind. Just a quick aside, there's a lot of people that are really excited about retirement because they're free, right? No work, no obligations. And I just talked to a guy that did a TED Talk, Riley Moynes, who many of our listeners might be familiar with, and he talks about that phase one of retirement is that honeymoon period. But you quickly get through that honeymoon period and realize, well, I got 20, 30 more years of this. What do I do? So coming up with what are my interests, the passions, and then figure out what are some achievable goals, at that point.
Yeah. And embrace lifetime learning. Long time learning. I do that. I refuse to just sit back on the laurels of what I know because everything's changing so quick. I want to keep up with what's happening, not just what I know. I want to know the new technology. I want to know what the new tax laws are and so forth. I'm always curious to know more and be able to embrace it.
And because it ends up normally at that stage ends up helping you. I remember actually both of my grandmothers, first it's like, oh, I don't really need to use a smartphone. I can just call somebody up if I want to. And, they both ended up getting into texting and, FaceTime and they love it. It's this
Yeah.
amazing thing. So if you just condemn yourself to say, oh, I'm not learning anymore, I'm not learning these new things, even though I know it's challenging, it's, you keep that lifetime learning mentality and it helps.
Only old dogs don't learn new tricks.
Well,
A young dog continues to learn new tricks.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Volunteer your time. Volunteering is an incredible way to because I believe wholeheartedly that fulfillment comes in doing something for others, not doing something for yourself. It comes from doing something for others, and that's why a lot of times volunteering your time, but it doesn't have to be volunteering your time. It could be actually working
Right.
in a part-time job that does something for somebody else, but it at the same time rewarding to you. So
Well, and whether it's part-time work or it's volunteering, one of the things that comes from that are those social connections.
yeah,
Somebody fully retires and says, I'm done. They don't, maybe in the moment, they don't really realize, wow, I've known Drew for, 13 years now, and now I'm not spending 40 hours a week with Drew. That's a change. And having those social connections is pretty critical to even your physical health over the duration of your retirement.
sure. I'm going to let you talk about travel and explore because I don't travel much and you love it.
I I do, but I don't know about you saying you don't travel much. I've seen you go a few places.
Not lately, though.
Yeah, but I think this is one that uh that's in that phase one of retirement. You got that honeymoon period. You say, I'm going everywhere I wanted to go because I'm not tied down from work. And what I found is that traveling is a lot of fun, and depending on where you want to go, but it all comes down to, well, who are you traveling with? I have traveled with my family, I've traveled without my family, and it's just completely different experiences. So when you're retiring and figuring out, well, what does this look like, whether it's travel or otherwise, it's, well, who am I going to do this with? That's a big
Right.
piece.
Right. Focus on your health, keeping your health good, eating well, going to the gym, working out, doing something, that'll keep the ligaments, the muscles, and everything well toned. I'm not a big gym guy, but I do an exercise every day, except sometimes during tax season. Where my time becomes so limited that I can't easily, but I always try to do something to try to keep that.
Well, it's being active, and I think you've talked about, Drew. You even, you'll do some gardening and things like that. That you're just on the move. You're
Yeah,
not somebody that sits still, and that's really at the heart of it. You don't have to go get a membership where, I pick things up and put things down, kind of mentality. It's about being on the move, and I'd say for really a majority of our clients, the financial constraints are much less than, yes, these health constraints. So
yeah.
focusing on this as important or more important than anything to do with finances.
And lastly, if you do feel that you're in retirement and you feel negative for some reason, it's all of a sudden turned negative, seek help, seek guidance. Look to somebody who's doing it right and you feel that they're enjoying themselves, and find out from them. And and if that doesn't help you, find somebody that can give you the guidance, because it's really probably you're just listening to the wrong message. We all have thoughts that come through our head. And if we pick up on these one group of negative thoughts, they're just going to take over. And it's tough to get away from them once you allow them to get under. But sometimes just seeking guidance and help from someone else can help to push those negatives out, start bringing the positives one in.
Right.
So in conclusion to all this, Graham, the mission statement of our company is all about helping to lessen the worry and burden of money management so that you can really focus on the thing that will bring you fulfillment in life. And that's always going to be in relationships. And as our mission statement says, whether it's the relationships that our employees have with each other, or if it's the relationships that our clients have with us, or if it's the relationships that our clients have with others, that's what's important. Relationship is the ultimate power of life. Money is an incredibly useful tool, but it is not the power that relationships are. So
yeah, couldn't agree
that's
more.
the message.
Right.
That's the end of this pulse. We probably went longer than Mikey and I would have, but that was good. You did a great job, my friend, for a quick stand-in.
There we go.
Anyway, this is Drew Tignanelli saying God bless.